Okay, you probably all heard that. I had forgotten to actually start the recording at the beginning of your meeting. This is the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee meeting of November 10th. The meeting was called to order at 5:32, and we are going to proceed with business. The next item, Route 62 corridor project planning updates. So I think Tim, Fred, and I, and maybe Chief, I'm not sure, met with Sujatha at CMRPC, who's the head transportation planner at CMRPC, regarding possible future TIP projects. And so what CMRPC is doing for us currently, and we should have a product in the spring, is that they are doing a Route 62 corridor study in preparation for possible future large projects. So we should be seeing that corridor study late winter or spring of this year. Some of the items that I'm going to try to boil it down here. Route 62 is a long corridor stretching from Hudson to Clinton. And so we look at different areas of the corridor, and because of the village center study that has been ongoing or has been done, we kind of have focused a little bit on the village center with traffic safety issues, signage issues, pedestrian safety issues, and things like that. But CMRPC is going to look at all of this for us. And what this will do, what the corridor study will do, is allow us to put together a project notification form to MassDOT if we find any major projects concentrated in any given area of Route 62. That project notification form is reviewed and scored by MassDOT. And then once it's scored, it can be put into the queue for transportation improvement projects for our region. And frankly, with the federal infrastructure bill having been passed, I do think there is going to be opportunity coming up for large and small infrastructure projects alike. Fred, this kind of ties in with the small bridge project program. I think this will be one of the many things that happens. So I think the timing of CMRPC's Route 62 corridor study is good, and the town could benefit from it, from the study. I could go all over the place with TIP, but being in the queue for a transportation improvement program project, and for the time from being put on it to actually having the project selected depends on a number of things. And the average wait time is about 5 to 6 years before a project is going to move from the application or the project notification all the way to the project being selected for construction. And the way the TIP works is that it is money that comes down from the federal government through MassDOT into regional transportation agencies. And it's a small pot of money, and municipalities and the state vie for this money to complete projects. In order to be taken seriously, in order for a project to be taken seriously and move forward, the Transportation Planning Agency does want to see some commitment by the sponsor, by the town or another entity that wants to do the project. So even though we may not have to have all design and pre-engineering done in order to have a project approved, there has to be some sort of commitment from the town that it wants to pursue this project. So I jumped way far ahead to TIP. What we're looking at now is the very beginning of a study that's going to look at various issues along Route 62. This is going to include culvert proposals, assessment of drainage structures, pavement condition, congestion, traffic patterns. So this is going to be something that our group is going to want to look at when we get the study. Tim and Fred, you were at the meeting, right? Do you want to add anything to what was discussed at that?
Other than the fact that Rich was very knowledgeable with what he's already seen along the corridor, and it'll be interesting to see what he puts together for it.
Mm-hmm. It absolutely will be. And this could also tie in with our complete streets projects as well.
So do we need to think proactively about all these projects and begin to put articles on the warrant that requests some of the seed money that is needed to get the engineering off the ground, so that when the opportunity arises, we can say, yep, we've accomplished some preliminary engineering, and as a result, we can speculate as to what total cost would be for the project and how it would be phased, for instance, and stuff like that. It seems as though we've got to spend money to make money here, and
Yep.
and I don't know what that sum is. I mean, Fred may have some ideas about what would make sense to be able to go to town meeting and get a successful response from folks to put up the $250,000, seed money to start with, and then argue that that's going to be money that we'll look for on a continual basis. There'll be other projects, maybe at whatever level, that we'll want to continue to do the engineering for in order to get the state support. And the Baker administration's made it clear, if you spend money, we'll give you money. And whether it's CPA or transportation improvement, all this stuff, it's over and over again. If a town commits some of its funds, it seems as though the state then says, okay, we're on the same playing field and we're going to start to back you up. But if you're not willing to spend the planning money and some of the seed money, we don't believe you're legitimately involved. I mean, the Central Mass, the Planning Commission, when we got DLTA money and we'd say to communities, give us a proposal, if they didn't have an investment in the project, we were pushing them to the table, trying to get them to commit to their part of the responsibility. And lots of times they wouldn't, because they hadn't invested anything. So
Yeah.
my sense is we need some idea as to what article needs to go on the warrant and what amount of money is reasonable and attainable, and then could we accomplish by getting some of this moving forward.
Excellent point. Fred and I are actually going to be meeting with an engineer next Friday morning, and Fred will be able to talk more about this. This is actually a bridge, a structural engineer for bridge, but they are a civil engineering firm, and we may be able to get a little bit of information from them. This is neither here nor there, but engineering, horizontal engineering, happens to be one of the services that is exempt from procurement law. And so we could actually do an RFP for engineering services without having to, jump through hoops to actually get services done. We might very well have a good opportunity here through the town's ARPA funds to be able to do some of the design engineering for infrastructure improvements. Now, road repaving is specifically excluded from ARPA eligibility, but the design engineering to rebuild culverts and to do all kinds of other traffic studies may actually be eligible for funding. So June and I are trying to work really hard to try to decipher what's going to be eligible, what's not, what kind of plan we could work with the select board on to put in place as far as using our ARPA funds. We've got 900, it's almost $1 million in ARPA funds, 500,000, almost 500,000 of which has already been distributed to us that we're just sitting on, waiting for not waiting, but we're working on developing a plan for. So that could be an excellent opportunity using the ARPA funds. And Tim, by the way, those ARPA funds do not, we'd want community input, but they do not require town meeting approval. They are considered a grant that the select board needs to approve. So the select board can make a decision on those. So we're going to come up with a plan, a kind of an outline of some projects, and we'll get everyone's input and try to put something together so we can put projects together. So that's one thing. The other thing is Chapter 90 funding. Chapter 90 funding can also be used for design engineering. The town has been, not for sidewalks, but for the roads themselves. So that might be that might be another opportunity. So that's something that Fred and I might be able to talk with VHB about, Chapter 90 funds for that. We will absolutely be looking to use some Chapter 90 funds for the hazard bridge that's been identified down on South Street. So that's going to be a request that has to go to the select board. So I think we do have some opportunity here, and you know, absent those funding sources, we absolutely need to go to town meeting, and we need to talk about the need to improve infrastructure and traffic safety on the Route 62 corridor and elsewhere. So that's something that we need to work on.
One of the notes I took during that meeting was, aren't they now just setting up the 2027 projects? Is that what they were talking about?
Yeah.
They were that far out?
Yeah, it's usually 5 to 6 years. Yeah.
But I also wrote down that that had to be submitted by December. Does that mean that we would have to have a project in place to get on the 2027 by December?
Yes. So we would have to have a project submitted to get into the queue by December. And I think Rich, was it Rich or Sujatha, or Kevin, one of them made it clear that it's gonna be unlikely that we'll be able to put something in place and get it in by December. So they suggested waiting for the corridor study to come in, and then we can develop a more comprehensive or project need form for MassDOT and get into the next round. So yeah, could be 2028.
Yeah.
It takes a while, but these are multi-million-dollar projects where, you know, there are limited other funding sources, you know, other than municipalities borrowing for them. Construction would be completed by MassDOT. It wouldn't be something that would be under the town's purview at all. This would all be under the construction jurisdiction of MassDOT. So they'd be performing the project, providing all labor, equipment, and doing the work.
I like that idea.
Isn't that nice? You can
That's
sit back and supervise.
Yes. Actually, they supply that as well. They have a guy on the ground that
Well, there you go.
makes things work.
Yeah. So we need to think about how best to bring forward. I could draft. So a couple of years ago, this is pre-COVID, I actually did put in a request to the Capital Planning Committee for funding for this, but it didn't seem that the Capital Planning Committee was quite there yet. I didn't really understand the need to do this, to pay for this pre-work in order to get bigger work done. So with the prevalence of the infrastructure bill, and if we keep talking about the Route 62 corridor study, it might be able to remain in the forefront, and people will better understand the need to put some funding commitment into this.
And the Center Village study, which we should begin to roll out somewhat soon, is gonna continue to talk about complete streets. And like you said, you can't do anything with the majority of the projects in complete streets with some of this money. You've got to look for our own sources to do the engineering, I think.
Yeah.
The sidewalks and stuff.
So this is an opportunity to start small with that, going to town meeting and starting for small amounts of funding for those smaller, the sidewalk projects and things. Okay. Okay. All right, we'll work on that. Deadline for the Capital Planning Committee has passed, but I will see if I can do something, maybe we could do a special article and ask for the capital planning committee's consideration for that. Okay, anything else on Route 62 corridor project planning updates? Okay, the next item is parking regulations. I don't know if we're prepared to discuss, if Eric is prepared to discuss this. Eric, at our last meeting, were you at our last meeting, Eric? With
I
Chief?
was. Yeah, I was. Well,
Okay,
no, I take that back. I was at the selectmen's. I gave the report when I submitted the
Okay.
parking regulations.
okay. So at our last meeting, Chief Galvin explained an issue with the parking regulations that were adopted by the select board. There was one small piece in particular, but it's not small for some people, I'm sure, that prohibits overnight parking on any town ways. And so Chief noted that the Carterville area, there is frequently overnight parking. So I think he commented that, maybe we need to take out any, all overnight parking and replace it with overnight parking on streets from November 1 to April 1, during the winter operations, or exclude certain parts of town where residents feel that they have to have the opportunity to park overnight during time. So I think that's something that we probably want to look at a little more and make an edit to that particular portion of the parking regulations. Does anybody, would you like to hold on this for further review before we make a recommendation on that? I don't even have them up on my screen, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, I'd like to hold, Margaret, for some other reasons. And one other thing in my notes is that we talked about last time was to maybe keep a ban on sidewalk parking. But
Yes, yeah.
but not do get rid of the current ban as it stands. And I think that was mostly focused on town center.
Yeah.
So if I live in Carterville and I want to park on the street, am I parking on the street or am I parking on the sidewalk?
Well,
Yeah, one of the
there's an
issues.
area next to the street that we call a sidewalk, but it
Right.
actually, I walk it not daily, but I pretty much walk in the street because it's dangerous on the sidewalk. So, but vehicles do park on what is the sidewalk in certain areas. They do.
I mean, if they didn't park on the sidewalk, they would really be blocking the street, wouldn't they?
Yes, I mean the street really begs to be a one-way. It's a lane, and because the houses are so close together, it's
So, I mean, there we are back again to, yeah,
Complete streets?
yeah, absolutely, Tim. It absolutely does. Yeah.
Carter becomes one way.
And Woodward ought to be one way for similar reasons
And
for
Carter in the
especially-
center, though, is two ways
Yeah,
for the reasons that got pointed out during, but I mean, how would that fly? What do you think, guys? I'm interested in. No, Eric says no way.
I just know the grief that we took when we put up those temporary barricades to reroute, when they did the traffic study during COVID.
But
And,
I thought the objection that was really valid in that case was anybody that's driving a truck that needs to do any business in the center of town at the store or whatever has to have that fluid motion around. Is that still true if you block off Carter from Highland to Walnut Avenue? I mean, how else do you solve the problem in Carterville with people want to park there because they can't park in their yard because they don't have a yard. They park on the sidewalk. In one of our objectives in Complete Streets is to create a real sidewalk through there, especially now that you're going to have Highland Ridge folks theoretically trying to walk. And then we've also got this notion of You know, I mean, it's just, it's too complex, a little cycle there.
Tim, I've never, the thought has occurred to me, is it possible on a town street to make certain regulations not apply to local residents? Can you say that something's one way except for local residents? Can you say that on a sign? Is that something we can do? I know I'm the lawyer in the group, but this is not my area. I don't know
But
anything.
the police would love to enforce that one, I imagine, you know.
All right,
All over.
yeah.
Yep. Where are you from? I'm from Bolton. Okay.
Yeah. Mm.
Well, how many people live? There's like 8 people that live, eight, what are there, 8 houses on that stretch?
No, there's more than that.
Yeah, it's quite a few.
Yeah, they're very close together.
From, well, what are there, 10 then?
Yeah, might be a dozen.
No way.
I'm
Where's
trying to
mine?
think. As
Huh?
you look toward, okay, as you're coming down Highland, you look toward, and then Carter, and you look toward the center,
Mhm.
there's a side, well, what you might call a sidewalk on the right-hand side. Is there also one on the left?
No,
No.
Okay.
No. no, I mean, I know this like the back of my hand, this area. All right, so you got Quinn's house, you got MJ's house, you got Tracy, Laura, is it Lauren and Eric or something, the new people? Then there's, I think, a Moody house, and there's Jackie, then Moody's, and then another Moody, and then the Arthurs, and that's only that side of the street. So I'm up to like 10, okay?
No, you're at 8. And how many you got on the other side?
Oh, well, then, can I put Munions in, right?
I
So
see.
now I'm at 9.
No,
You're not gonna let Munions go in? They're not allowed in this little special group? I consider myself my address is technically Highland Street, but I
yep,
consider
that's
myself.
where
in
you live
Carter.
too, right? You're not in Carterville.
Yeah. And so then if you go to the other side, shall I walk you down? You have Mary Porter, you have Rogers number 4, Highland.
No,
And
they're,
Barbara
they're not,
Spencer.
they're not on that street.
You're not gonna let that
So-
little Highland, that quad right there. There's 4 on Highland, okay?
Right.
I'm
So-
looking at it from this side of the tracks.
Well, that's because you live there, right?
So
Yeah.
that sidewalk is not in the least bit handicapped accessible.
No.
So
Mhm.
if it was reconstructed, it would have to be made wider. There would have to be ramps. It would narrow the public way even more than it already is.
Right.
Oh, boy.
You'd
Yeah.
have to move the poles out of the street too. That would be
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah.
The
Sounds like a
poles-
major project.
It is. The poles start in my yard and they go down that side.
We'd have to
Obviously,
start calling National Grid right now if you.
Oh,
wanna
yeah.
move.
It'll be 5 or 6 years.
That's right, while you're waiting for the tip.
Yeah, we're being recorded, right? So why don't we say, yeah, we're gonna have to rip down all the houses on one side of the street in
Oh,
order to
my.
widen it and, you know, really open things up. But
I just come back to this. I think a one-way circle is the only way you're going to properly manage traffic in that zone. And, I don't, one way up Woodward, up that stretch of Carter, and then one way out to 62 at St. Joseph's Church. I don't see any other resolution to that issue. It's really awful. I mean, right now I'm getting, 10, 12 heavy construction vehicle trucks an hour. I mean, it is relentless.
Mm.
And that's blended in with the GPS traffic, which coming out of Bolton. And the Highland Ridge drivers have forgotten they're supposed to be 15 miles an hour. So I need to send another email about that. They forgot as soon as the sign was removed. They're back to speeding. Orlando fuel truck that fuels the equipment up there at the top of the hill. That guy routinely does 30 around the bend and down through Carter to 62 routinely. And he always did. He didn't even bother when the earthworks things first happened.
Mm.
We've never gotten his attention. Orlando fuel. I'll write it down for everybody. You can tell Mr. Vinacasa. Not that he cares.
we need some engineering.
Yep, you're not kidding. In a very big way. And to have that professional feedback will go a long way. We tried to do it, as Eric said, we took a lot of heat during the shared streets pilot. That was on our own. If we could have outside experts come in and weigh in, then, maybe residents will be a little more receptive to various ideas. So we need engineering. And it's not that Complete Streets project, just knowing what we talked about today, the sidewalks on Carter Street, this cost is going to be significantly escalated, right? With the moving of the utility poles. And I have no idea if there's going to be any right-of-way issues there with you rebuilding the sidewalks. No. That's for the engineers to look at.
So this parking issue again, though, that's where we started this,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
If you say that Carterville's excluded from this language because they end up having to park on the street, then, that they're technically, though, if they're parking on the sidewalk. And we're saying you can't park on sidewalks in the language? Is that what it says?
Well, Chief Galvin, no, it doesn't. I don't think it says that. Chief Galvin said maybe you do an edit to what we have today to say something like that. But you'd only edit if the sidewalk is useful and it isn't. So
You said you're walking in the street.
I always walk in the street unless there's a lot of two-way traffic going. With the big truck there, I'll step off on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
But the surface is so uneven that it's a trip hazard, and I'm an athlete, kind of, sort of. So I have to watch where I put my feet when I use that sidewalk.
All right.
But they do a nice job taking the snow off. I'm no complaint there.
Yeah. More justification for engineering. So. Okay.
It's fine when you get down to the triangle where the church is. But that's pretty new, right, Tim? That's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was done bicentennial.
Yeah.
Oh, that was bicentennial, was it? Okay.
That was
2012. Yeah.
These are all this conversation is just adding to the written justification that will be submitted on the calls for engineering support. All right, do we have anything else on that one? We'll hold on the parking regulations to the next meeting. Bob Blair was at the last meeting with a request for guardrails on South Street. Fred, have you got any updates for us today on this?
I do. I actually, I never got any calls back from Mass DOT or anyone like that. I was lucky enough when I met up with the bridge inspectors that day. They did, because he expressed concern that he wanted more guardrail around the area of the water. And they confirmed that we are in compliance with what we need to be anywhere around the water. And I looked into it through the federal highway. And the standard for the guardrail is actually taken from 24 inches from the edge of the road. And it's determined on a 1 to 4 slope as to what you have there.
Oh.
And I think the area he was referring to was coming down the hill on the right-hand side. That's the only place that I think he was talking about. But even the gentleman from the bridge inspectors took a look at that area and said there was no need for it there. So that's as far as I got with that. But I also did find out that all the guardrail we did install back when Keith was here was put in wrong because it's right on the edge of the road and there should have been a shoulder built up and a whole bunch of other work done. But we never did it. We just pounded.
Is that an area of concern, imminent concern as far as safety?
Not what he was talking about, no. If we start removing trees on the uphill side, which I believe is on the east side of the road heading uphill, we would have to start adding guardrail there because the slope would require it.
But the area in question, or that Bob brought to the committee's attention, we are in compliance currently with.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
All right, that is good. That is good because the next the next agenda item is complete streets and other projects. And I think I'll just ask Fred. Fred, why don't you go right into the whole South Street Bridge thing, since we're on that subject anyway, kind of.
Oh, yes. So the bridge is really in bad shape. And it's actually worse than what we thought, because when the gentlemen were down there inspecting one other one, we walked over and took a look at that one. And what's happening, I wish I had pictures to share because you'd be amazed. A lot of the girders underneath actually have a lot of missing steel material out of it, enough that you could almost climb through the girder. And if you're standing at the road height looking at the bridge deck, you can see the sinkholes right in the middle of the road on like the yellow line, which means the center of the bridge is going to fail before the outside girders do. He couldn't guarantee that it was going to get through the winter because he doesn't want that on himself. But he did give us ideas if the outside girders start failing, that we can actually take it upon ourselves. We can block it to get time out of it. But if the center of it fails, they're going to end up closing the bridge for us. So yeah, we're hopefully going to meet with the engineer, and that's this Friday, I think, right? 10 a.m.
Oh, you're right. It seems like next week, but it's this Friday, 10 a.m. Yes.
Thank God.
Don't want to waste any time on that.
No, definitely not. So I'm actually really kind of excited to be meeting with him, because when I first got a bridge inspection, like I had never seen one before. And when I saw this one, I was like, oh my God, like it's been bad for a while. And it really needs to get done. And it's just so you know, the one we're talking about, if you're coming down South Street, you're going to come to one water crossing. It's the second one, basically right on the corner, is the one in question. That was, I don't have that paper, but I believe it was built in 1950 something. It was rebuilt in 1975. Was the
Is
last
that
time.
the one with the concrete? It's kind of corroding the concrete edge there on the right-hand side. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. As you're going down South Street?
Yeah, not the first one you come to.
Okay.
It would be the second one. So the first one actually has like stone walls, concrete stone walls built up behind the guardrail. That one is showing some issues, but they're not superly concerned with that just yet. But that one gets inspected every 6 months because they're concerned with it. Along with the one that we're going to be dealing with is every 6 months. Usually it's an annual thing.
Are there other bridges in town that they're inspecting on a 6-month basis?
Nope, these are the only two.
Oh, good.
Because they actually just came and did the one on Linden Street and the one down below Walter Bickford's house. Those were the last two that just came in. I just printed the report for them Monday. And those are actually graded still in the 7s. The one that we're going to be dealing with is actually down in 3 and 4s. When they get to a 2, they're really seriously thinking about closing the bridge. And obviously, if it gets to the 1 rating, it'll be done.
And so moving forward, if they, what timetable would you be looking at in terms of repairing that?
It would be nice. Like, I think we missed the grant period for the small bridges because a small bridge is anything under 20 feet, which we have four or five, if I remember, that fall under that category. And we're responsible for the repairs for that. So we missed that period. So we're hoping by meeting with the engineer, we can start with the design and engineering and get everything in place. So if something opens in the spring, we can hit it running to get that.
I feel strongly that the infrastructure bill is the funding from that's going to be filtering down here.
Yeah.
And we may see some funding becoming available as early as the spring. So having the engineering done now is going to be critical to being ready that'll make it shovel ready.
Yes.
And you'd end up, the bridge would be closed for what, 6 months, 4 months, 8 months?
Another thing I want to look into, which the bridge guys actually agreed with, is actually changing that from a bridge to a box culvert.
Okay.
Would take away a lot of the maintenance, and
Yeah.
it would go quicker than a bridge would.
Change it to a what, Fred?
A box culvert.
A box culvert, okay.
which basically it's just a concrete box, basically, that you just put it in the ground and work around it.
So it's
Um,
it's prefab. You don't have to construct in place.
Right, exactly. The
What's
only
the-
thing
What
would
is,
be
the-
walls.
what is the span anyway?
I actually have that written down at the highway garage. But that one, I think it's like 14.6,
Okay,
if I remember. The only one that comes really close is actually down on Lower Pleasant Street. That's the one down by Alden Drive that has really deteriorated handrails. But the bridge itself is structurally sound. It's just something we'll have to address for the handrails.
Mhm.
And the rest of the bridges in town, a lot of them is just they need paint job. There's a lot of concrete spalling that we need to fix up, and just make them so they last a lot longer now.
good.
Yeah, so Fred will have a good idea as of Friday as to how, how quickly we can get the estimate from the engineer. And then we can promptly bring it to the select board for approval for Chapter 90 funding for their work, and then they can move on it, and hopefully we can be ready for spring. Or before.
Meanwhile, I'll use Pleasant Street all the more.
Yes, I would too. Well, that's one thing I asked them was where they wouldn't commit to actually saying, yes, it's gonna fall in the winter, or no, it's not. But I wanted them to at least let me know that if a cyclist rides over it, it's not gonna fall down. So it hasn't quite hit that point, but
So-
they no rating for it either.
Do you consider like excluding more of the truck traffic as a result of this?
Well, a lot of the trucks can't go down there anyway because of the bridge down by Walter Bickford's. That one actually has rating. So usually the only ones that will be going over it is like my truck, the sander for the town. And like Paul Wheeler may go over it with his 10-wheeler. But yeah, even the fire trucks don't go down over that.
How about the school buses?
Yeah.
Yeah, the buses should still be fine.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll be going Pleasant Street now too.
Know what you know. All right. So Fred or I will provide the committee updates after we meet with the engineer on Friday. So our hope is that this can move pretty quickly.
Yeah.
All right. Pending street sign requests. The only ones that I have in front of me are those that were submitted by Mary in August of last year. I don't think I saw one from an information request from Emily Shanley on October 18th, but I don't think, Fred, she hasn't submitted a street sign request, has she?
No, the only ones we've gotten was just the woman from West Street.
Lucy.
Her sign is up.
Mhm.
The one up on Linden Street got put up. And we
Oh,
also,
that's awesome.
Chief Galvin gave us a file that has all the speed limit signs with exactly where they're supposed to be, as to how many feet away. So 2 weeks ago, we put up the 30-mile-an-hour sign up on Highland Street. It's actually a little bit further up because if we put it 100 feet from the intersection, it landed in the middle of somebody's driveway.
Yeah, that's
that-
tight in there. Yep.
Mm.
So we did move it up the street like 50 extra feet, and put it just off the edge of the road near a telephone pole. So at least there is a street sign up there now for it.
Yeah, just by the tracks.
That's a speed limit sign?
Because I even tried measuring down from the upper sign up around the corner where it drops above Ray Donna's house. And again, it fell right in the middle of their driveway. So that's why we just moved it up a little bit.
So that's on Highland?
Yeah.
Okay. What is the speed there?
30 miles an hour.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, it's 30 going up the hill, 30 coming down, and then it drops to 20 right after the intersection of Highland and Carter.
Yeah, all those are just suggestions,
Yeah,
Well, yeah, so I have to say, the other day I went Carter, the backside of Carter, and came around. And I almost got cut off by one of the big trucks heading up Highland. And I thought to myself, why is it we don't have a stop sign here? Why is there, this pertains to Mary's request from last year. And why is there any reason why we wouldn't put a stop sign there, even understanding that some of the trucking activity is temporary, but Eric, this, maybe you could answer this. Could we put a stop sign there from
Are you
Carter
talking-
heading out onto Highland?
Yeah, so you're talking about coming out of Carter and make a left, or you're talking about coming down Highland to Carter?
Coming out of Carter, if you were to come out of Carter and take a left onto Highland, or a right, to head back into the village center.
Yeah,
We-
my request, Eric, was to have a stop sign in both directions where Highland turns into Carter, both directions,
Yeah,
coming down the
so-
hill, going the other way.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, it's fantastic, but in reality, when you hear those trucks hitting their brakes and stopping and then revving their engines to get going again, I think that's gonna be more, you're gonna have noise pollution versus a truck that's potentially going more than 15.
Yeah.
What about, so,
So there's two issues there, Eric. One is, we hope that construction won't go on forever.
That's correct.
GPS traffic continues to roll down, and my sign request also asks for requests at Randall Road, try to pulse the traffic. So the point of the stop signs in both directions at Carter Highland is to pulse the traffic. So
Correct.
they can't go around that bend at 40. I
That's
got
correct.
the cleanup after that guy hit Barbara Spencer's stone wall.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that was a medical.
know,
mistake.
that-
But, yeah.
And then at Randall, same thing. It's, it's to discourage people from you can go almost 5 miles without any obstacle.
Yeah,
You start at 117 and go to 62. And
yeah.
it's roughly 10 years ago, GPS had started, and and they're fast.
Yeah,
They're
I mean,
really fast.
there's no doubt. It's just that I know, the stop signs then creates noise pollution, which is then another complaint.
Hey, Eric,
So-
there's noise
Yeah.
pollution with these construction
Yeah.
trucks anyway.
Yeah.
Constant, constant, doesn't matter.
I would be behind it. I would just make sure your neighborhood is behind it.
Yeah, well, they funnel their complaints to me. I keep saying, why don't you guys
Yeah.
write? They keep coming
Yeah.
to me.
Like I said, I'm pretty sure that we have the authority to put up stop signs wherever we want. Which I don't have an issue with at all. It's just, I just want to make sure that it's something the neighborhood wants. Because believe it or not, I mean, I'm very well versed in multiple stop signs to slow traffic down. And I hear the reverse after it's done, like, oh man, what did we do?
Well,
And then it's hard to, in one section of town, it hasn't been reversed and it won't be reversed. But they're now like, oh, you know what? I think I tolerate that car going a little fast rather than hearing this all day long. Like I said, I'm for it. I don't live in the neighborhood. If that's what the neighborhood wants, I'm absolutely 100% behind it. But you just have to remember, there's for every action, there's a reaction.
got it. I got it, Eric. Some people occasionally on the street talk about speed bumps, but
Yeah.
as a car-
What do we call them now? Traffic trays, not speed bumps. We call them traffic trays now. Yeah. I'm game for any of that. Absolutely. Just has to be. I'd like to see it to be a neighborhood thing that that's express interest.
In East Berlin, when the Highland Commons was being built, it really was driven by the citizens on the street collectively coming forward, I think with a petition almost that said, we want traffic calming. And then we built that into the negotiation and the development agreement, and that 25,000 or whatever got put aside to allow for the traffic trays or whatever it is, and the stop signs. But that was driven, like Eric's saying, by the folks on the street saying, we want this. So if you can get a petition from your neighborhood that clearly indicates that that's what they want. So like Eric's saying, after the fact, people begin to scratch their head and ask, what have we done? I mean, it isn't driven by the town working independently from the neighborhood.
Understood, Tim. Understood. Yeah. Well, I think, when did my request come in? I guess maybe I'm a bit impatient. My request went in August 23, 2020.
Right.
So, there's been no action. So I can sit on this committee, I can talk to myself in the committee. Why haven't you done anything? Right. So look, and I did bring it up once, and I think Chief Galvin said something about counting cars with the device that counts vehicles and speed and so on. I can, just anecdotally, one of my neighbors there, actually on Carter Street, Tim, not in Highland, okay, said, thinking about selling my house because the traffic is so bad, the speed. Okay, I need to move. And by the way, that thought goes through my head every day.
We're actually hearing the same, we're hearing the same thing from people on Pleasant Street, where the
Yeah.
volume and the trucking activity has increased dramatically. So it's.
Pleasant Street is more a function of 290, 495, I think. But what we're experiencing on Carter and Highland has a lot to do with the 117 situation and coming to 62. And actually it does give a bypass for the 490, 290, 495, 290 intersection. So if you're coming down from 117, if you can make a left onto 62 when you get to the center of town, then you can make a right on Pleasant, and then you've bypassed the interchange to get on 290. So some of it is that, and some of it's just people running errands. I mean, it's just, you can tell. You can tell the commuter traffic, you can tell, but the GPS is, traffic is faster than the construction truck traffic. Probably a little bit less dangerous, maybe just because of the weight, but it's a crisis point. I don't, there isn't a neighbor on that street that has disagreed with me about stop signs. I've talked to everybody, except the new guy with the red Charger. Like Rick, the one that sits out there. Yeah, I haven't talked to him.
I still feel that if you came to this committee with the signatures of those dozen houses, this committee would say, let's go ahead. I think.
All right.
Because then it would be clear that there's the will of the neighborhood,
Okay. Do I have to do Highland too, or just Carter, Tim?
You better do those 4 houses on Highland that are this side of the tracks. That's my thought anyway. I'm
That's a two-way street, okay?
I'm only one of several here. But I'd feel more comfortable having the committee make a recommendation to the town that they put up a stop sign on the corner of, well, it's 3 ways really, right? We want 3 stop signs is what we're proposing.
Mhm.
And I agree with Eric. It makes sense, but there has to be, like in East Berlin, that will of the neighborhood that's on a piece of paper that says, we support this. But I would think, like you say, they'd sign it in a flash. So
As long as they understand the stopping and starting, the trucks, like Eric said, that is going to make, well, it's not going to make more noise. It's just going to be a different kind of noise, I suppose.
It's just hell, okay? Doesn't matter at this point. And those trucks eventually will go away. But, the regular traffic that comes through stopping and starting, yeah, you're going to have some air pollution from the exhaust systems, all that kind of stuff. I get it. And some noise, but
you're not talking about a stop sign that, like Pleasant Street now holds up people. So there's idling and pollution that occurs that's different than what you're going to experience with you guys. You're not going to end up with a line of cars in front of your house.
You might in commuter hours, Tim.
What?
You might in commuter hours.
Yeah, but it's
I'm
not
telling
like,
you, it's bad.
it's not like they're sitting there saying, who's coming out of Carter from, Wheeler's Garage that's going to interfere with me crossing this intersection, where it is with so many other places in town where traffic is backed up and they can't get onto the road that they want to get onto. You can get across that intersection without any difficulty.
Mhm.
We're looking at a traffic calming option that gets people to stop, and then they go through Carterville at a hopefully more leisurely pace,
20 miles an hour would be nice.
Mhm. All right, so Mary, does everybody, Fred, Eric, you support Mary just getting the petition? And I'm not gonna take a vote on this. I think we'll go with consensus here.
Yeah, I think it's a real good idea because that way, the whole neighborhood is on board with it as well. It just makes more sense if everyone was on it. So, at the end, yeah, if something is objective, well, this is something we all agreed upon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So Dave Walker just went to Florida, so we're not going to get him on it, but everybody else should be around. We'll see.
Okay, so there's only a couple more items and I'm gonna propose that we hold two of them. So there we go. First of all, actually, there aren't any new street sign requests. We've already gone through that. Are we all set? We've talked a little bit about complete streets and other projects. Do we have anything else to discuss on that? Other than pursuing design engineering funding. And then the Jake break bylaws. If the committee is okay with this, I have a couple of examples of Jake break bylaws that I'm happy to share with you before the next meeting. You can take a look and just get a sense of what it is. And at the last meeting, there was discussion about talking with some trucking company operators here in town, some local, Mike Sawyers and things like that. To try to get their feedback on this, but there are actually several cities and towns that have Jake break bylaws, prohibitions. So I'll send you out a couple of drafts. And we'll hold discussion on that for our next meeting, if that's okay with you. And then lastly, the election of a chair, I also propose that we hold that one for our next meeting. So the only other thing we'd have to do tonight is set a meeting date for next month. So how does December 8th work for all of you?
That would work.
December
Works for me.
8th? Okay. All right. We'll do December 8th and we'll try 5:30 p.m. although I see Anna's not here again today. I'll check with her, but we'll go ahead and pencil it in for 5:30 p.m. December 8th.
And I had said that I would check on the Gates Pond truck exclusion stuff, and I haven't done that, and I will try to do that by the 8th.
Okay. Wow, that was a loaded agenda. So, all right, I've got my homework. We all have some updates to provide next time. So, unless there's any other discussion, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, just a quick question, Chris.
Oh, sure.
Chris, you get the petition, right? Select board?
Would it be us, Margaret, or would it be the town clerk?
Well, I think the select board. I think the
Yeah.
select board would be.
I think you're right. I just wasn't sure.
Yeah.
I move that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Do we need a second? I second it.
And roll call. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you.